New tonight on Our News Live at 7, spring break travel is looking good at this phase in the pandemic. That's according to airport officials.
Gas retailers laying it all on the table yesterday following a long-awaited sit-down with government. And tonight, the Prime Minister says they could see a resolution in as early as 2 weeks. The details of that meeting straight ahead on Our News.
Plus, a small protest outside BTVI after claims an employee was terminated unjustly. And then in Our News at 7:30, the Prime Minister speaks up on concerns over a multi-million-dollar beach club set for Paradise Island. His comments are straight ahead. Our News Live at 7 starts now. Welcome to Our News Live at 7. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Kendino Knowles. The government asking the Bahamas Petroleum Retailers Association for 2 weeks to come up with a resolution to their concerns. This after the association, they finally had that sit down with government yesterday discussing the industry's ongoing issues and challenges. Jamila Mizik is on the story.
Prime Minister Philip Davis asking the Bahamas Petroleum Retailers Association to give government more time, 2 weeks to be exact, to assess how they can better assist. This after the association took to the media following several attempts to meet with government to request a change in the profit margin for its members. And today, after finally getting that meeting with government, the Prime Minister and others expressed sympathy to the association over its viability.
The challenge we have is how we prevent further burden on the traveling public. And we need to see how we could delicately balance bringing relief to them and at the same time not overly burdening the consumers.
Now, as to why this meeting has been delayed, Economic Affairs Minister Michael Alquita says they've been meeting with the association.
We've had several meetings, so it's not that we have not been meeting. We've met before. I've met, they've met with the technical staff, they've met with the Prime Minister before, and there has been communications back and forth in between.
The association has primarily asked government for an increase on the currently fixed margin of 54 cents per gallon. And at the time, Economic Affairs Minister Michael Alquita said they were not prepared to do so. Today, the Prime Minister said
that option we're now rethinking and reconsidering.
And government now agreeing to explore other avenues to bring some relief.
We resolved to look at the entire model. Certain Caribbean countries they have a system of central purchasing. We want to, take a look at that and see if that is suitable in our environment. And we just want to look at the entire chain from, wholesale straight down to the consumer.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jamila Mizik.
All right, thanks a lot, Jamila. Well, tertiary educators gathering outside BTVI to protest against what they're calling an unjust termination of one of their own. Joshua Williams was there.
And if anyone touch any of these, they will have us to answer to.
Those were scathing words Union of Tertiary Educators in the Bahamas President Daniel Thompson had for officials from the Bahamas Technical Vocational Institute and the Bahamas General Workers Union. Thompson, along with staff of BTVI, standing outside the institution's gates, protesting what they call an unjust termination of one of their members. Thompson expressing disappointment in the lack of effort placed by the union to defend its members.
The union, as well as the institute, must be careful not to engage in union busting tactics. That while these workers may have are disgruntled with what took place a few weeks ago, nonetheless, they are still workers and they are still members of that union.
The group says they believe the termination comes as a result of a protest held outside of the office of the Prime Minister 2 weeks ago by members of the union who were not in agreement with the signing between BTVI and the union. UTEB Assistant Secretary Ernesto Williams says the termination violates the constitutional rights of Bahamians.
We are citizens of this country, and to be able to share words and stand up peacefully in demonstration, only to find yourselves receiving termination letters a few days after is concerning.
Thompson is expressing hope that government will step in to deal with the issue.
We are confident that this government, that our government, that my government will not tolerate this type of thing. And we expect that that same level of respect will translate to executives at this institute.
Thompson says the terminated worker is currently seeking legal action in hopes of resolving the matter. Now, we also reached out to officials from the institute, but our calls were not returned up to airtime. Reporting for Our News, I'm Joshua Williams.
All right, thanks a lot, Joshua. Well, a police officer accused of molesting his daughter remains in custody despite being granted bail on a Monday afternoon. Justice Gregory Hilton set bail at $12,000 for the 33-year-old corporal who spent more than a week in prison after being charged with 10 counts of incest. Prosecutors say the father began molesting his daughter in November 2020 when she was 10 years old, and the molestation allegedly continued until February 24th this year. The police officer will remain in prison until his shorters are approved by the court. And a 33-year-old man was arrested for possession of an unlicensed firearm and ammunition after trying to evade police. Police spotted the man acting suspiciously as Drug Enforcement Unit officers searched an abandoned building on Finlayson Street Monday afternoon. Upon seeing the officers, police say the man, who is a resident of Finlayson Street, ran into bushes at the rear of one of the abandoned buildings. During a chase, officers say they saw the man removing a black firearm from his waist and throwing it into the bushes. The officer caught the man and conducted a search where they found a black high-powered weapon with an extended magazine containing live rounds of ammunition.
This segment of the news is brought to you by H.G. Christie. List your home in Grand Bahama with H.G. Christie. Visit our new office in the Port Lacaya Marketplace. H.G. Christie, celebrating over 100 years of service.
And after months of complaints by residents in Grand Bahama, work is now complete on the service road at Fishing Hole Road Causeway. Our News speaking with some West Grand Bahama residents today who say their commute to and from the western end of the island is a little smoother. 8 Mile Rock resident Jonathan Sweeting says it's his hope that the causeway is completed soon.
I mean, it's smooth now. It just gave me the impression that you could have done this a long time ago. It's great no one lost their lives, nothing like that. We can move forward right now, and I hope they get the bridge done. We need both of them.
Our Talia Hall has a full story on this coming up in Our News at 7:30. And some sad news overnight as we learned of the death of veteran journalist, broadcaster, and diplomat Ed Bethel. Prime Minister Philip Davis labeling him an icon. We've got much more on his legacy in just a moment. But for now, it's time to check in with Greg, who you just saw a moment ago. He's got your first look at temperatures. Greg?
Some magic there for you,
I see.
Yeah, we have a thunderstorm outside. We heard some boomers as we are getting into the studio. We'll show that in our satellite picture, but it is still cloudy on the outside. Thunderstorm activity just to the north of Paradise Island. 77 degrees is our temperature right now outside the studios. West-northwest winds at 16 miles per hour, so those winds have picked up in your feels like temperature. Comfortable 76 on the outside. Temperatures actually around the islands this evening. Cool 73 in Freeport, 74 over in Marsh Harbor, Abaco. We pick up 75s here in Alistown, Bimini, and in the Great Albuquerque area. 76 in Nicholstown, over in Governor's Harbor, 77 into the Central Bahamas. 81 in Kemps Bay, 78 in Arthurstown with some nearby showers as well as some thunderstorms. 81 in Georgetown as well as in Deadman's Key. 78 in Coburn Towns in Salvador and into the Deep South. 80s most locations, exception Duncantown, Ragged Island, 79, Matthewtown, Inagua, 81, and our neighbors to the southeast, Turks and Caicos Islands, you guys are 81 at this hour. Satellite view, frontal boundary that moved into the northwest Bahamas last evening prompted some severe thunderstorm warnings for Grand Bahama as well as the Abacos. Now just drifting to the south of the capital, some thunderstorm activity out there as well, as I mentioned, just to the north of Paradise Island and extending back across to North Eleuthera. Most of the energy is still out in the Atlantic. That front will sag into the central Bahamas tonight. High pressure builds in and we are going to be windy and comfortable for temperatures tomorrow. That's your first look at weather. Stick with us. Look at your extended forecast is still to come.
Thanks, Greg. And still to come on Our News, why NASA and airport officials expect air arrivals to stay high for a while. And cool off for mental health. The Pan American Health Organization helping to break the stigma. And later, veteran journalist Ed Bethel has died. Tonight, his former colleagues reflect on his life and career. That's coming up when Our News returns. Airport arrivals are up again as March brings spring breakers. That's according to NAD president, who our Marlena Leonard spoke with this morning. She has more in this report.
Arrivals continue to be on the up and up, and it seems like they're going to stay that way for a while, according to Nassau Airport Development Company President and CEO Vernice Joaquin.
And we're really pleased to see the degree to which this feels like a normal year. Last year was, of course, the real start of our recovery in a meaningful way, but this year is feeling more like 2018 and 2019. So we're really pleased to see all of the spring breakers coming through, many of them in large groups, which is interesting. Because it means that the spring break tour operators are booking them in small groups, and so it's really a good situation for us.
The NAD president says that because we're a tourism destination, the airport has to work closely with the tourism board as well as hoteliers.
We're looking forward to a busy spring. The hoteliers have indicated that their bookings are very strong right through to the summer. And what is interesting about this is that unlike immediately coming out of the pandemic, where people were booking very short with short lead times, they book next week to travel, the week after, that sort of thing. And so now people are booking a lot further out. So I think that there's a lot of demand that is still out there, which is really very reassuring for us.
Joaquin says people are already making bookings for the fall, a welcome change from the uncertainty of immediate post-pandemic travel. This week marks 3 years since the Bahamas had its first COVID case, and Joaquin says it's a relief that at this stage protocols have been relaxed.
Just sort of managing through all of that, and now having none of that really be much of an issue has been very much of a relief.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Marlena Leonard.
All right, with emphasis being placed on mental health as of late, Pan-American Health Organization, PAHO, is trying to spread awareness locally and break the stigma of mental illness. The organization recently holding a bench painting ceremony to commemorate the initiative. PAHO representative for the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos Island, Dr. Aldana Basson, explains.
Like any other illness, it's important to talk about it, to share, and to seek treatment. So that's why the bench. The idea is people should sit on the bench and speak. We're also trying to challenge the stigma surrounding mental health illness. Just like if you have a physical illness and you may discuss it with someone and people would commiserate with you and want to be helpful, we want to encourage the same for mental health illnesses as well.
All right, now Dr. Basson says the next step in this initiative is shifting the focus to mental health of teens.
Going forward, certainly we would anticipate more. We are thinking about, in particular, target audience of young people, high schoolers. They've all been through a very hard time during the pandemic. And so going forward, we would like to place some focus on that target group as well.
All right, and just before the break, we told you of the overnight passing of veteran journalist, broadcaster, and diplomat Ed Bethel. We've got a full story on his life and legacy coming up in just a moment. But for now, Bethel started his career in journalism at the Tribune newspaper and eventually transitioned into broadcasting. During his time, he covered multiple milestones for the country, such as the independence in 1973. Prime Minister Philip Davis labeling him an icon.
He served this country well. I recall very vividly his involvement in coordinating the broadcasting efforts to mark the independence of the Bahamas in 1973. Him, Charles Carter, and Carl Bethel did an excellent job of informing and keeping the Bahamian public up to date on what was going on in that event. That was a signature moment for me in listening to Ed.
Free National Movement leader Michael Pintard remembering Bethel as a consummate professional who served with distinction and honor. Foreign Affairs Minister Fred Mitchell remembering Bethel as the voice that shaped how Bahamians felt about so many treasured national events, from independence, sports victories, and the loss of national public figures. Prime Minister Davis also recounting a moment during Bethel's commentating during a world title fight in France won by Elisha Obed.
His calling of that and his exuberance when Obed was really pummeling Miguel, I think his name Miguel Olivia, to take the belt, and how he just got carried away and just, oh Lord, he's killing him. That was a signature voice at that time. And of course, from that he became the face of our country when he became the Consul General in New York, and thereafter High Commissioner in London, and then Ambassador to the European Union for the Bahamas.
When our news comes back from the break, we turn our spotlight to stories making headlines across the world as a country in the region considers a request to hold U.S. gun manufacturers responsible for gun crimes in the Caribbean. Plus, on this day in Bahamian history in 2020, then Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis delivers his first national address on COVID. And later, the Grand Bahama Humane Society needs your help to combat breeding on the islands. The details when our news returns. This is our news. Welcome back. We turn our attention now to stories making headlines across the world. The U.S. military says a Russian fighter jet has collided with a U.S. drone, causing it to crash into the Black Sea. It says the drone was on a routine mission in international airspace when two Russian jets tried to intercept it. The U.S. European Command says the crash was the result of an unprofessional act by the Russians. The Russian Defense Ministry denied coming into contact with the drone in a statement on Tuesday, saying fighter jets scrambled to identify the intruder after detecting it over the Black Sea, adding that the drone went into an unguided flight with a loss of altitude. Tuesday's incident appeared to mark the first time since the height of the Cold War that a U.S. aircraft was brought down after being hit by a Russian warplane. At least 190 people are now confirmed dead in Malawi after tropical storm Freddie ripped through southern Africa for the second time in a month. Heavy amounts of brown water have cascaded through neighborhoods, sweeping away homes. Rescue workers are said to be overwhelmed and are using shovels to try to find survivors buried in the mud. Government's disaster relief agency said the death toll had risen from 99 on Monday to 190, while about 584 people were injured and 37 still missing. French President Emmanuel Macron launched the 500-day countdown to the 2024 Paris Olympics and Paralympics on Tuesday. Macron addressed hundreds of officials at a speech of thanks in the Paris police headquarters, saying that though plans are advancing, nothing should be taken as a guarantee. According to an Elysee official who spoke anonymously, the Paris Games budget is set at 4.4 billion euros.
Everything has been done to be on time, but we can't take anything for granted. My speech today is firstly a thank you speech to all of you, but it's also a rallying call because we know what is left to do in the 500 days that separates us from this extraordinary event that is the Olympic and Paralympic Games.
Payments of $5 million to every eligible black adult, the elimination of personal debt and tax burdens, guaranteed annual incomes of at least $97,000 for 250 years, and homes in San Francisco for just $1 a family. Those were some of the recommendations made by a city-appointed reparations committee in San Francisco. Critics slamming it as financially and politically impossible. One conservative analyst estimating that each non-black family in the city would have to pay at least $600,000. And in the region, Trinidad and Tobago is giving active consideration to a request by Mexico to the Caribbean community to pursue legal action in the United States to have gun manufacturers held responsible for gun-related crimes in the region. Speaking at a public meeting of his ruling People's National Movement recently, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley said Mexico, despite having lost an initial approach to U.S. authorities, intends to continue fighting, and he told party supporters his administration is considering the proposal. And finally, in Guyana, 64 pounds of cannabis found during a roadblock there. A 56-year-old taxi driver is now in police custody after he was busted. A party of police officers was conducting a roadblock exercise when they stopped a silver Toyota Premio. Officers say they found one black plastic bag containing 3 large transparent parcels. As we said, the man was arrested and investigations are ongoing. Still to come on our news, today in history, find out interesting facts about the day that was March 14th and the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine in the Bahamas. Plus, Greg is back with your extended weather forecast. And then in our news at 7:30, former colleagues of veteran journalist and diplomat Ed Bethel reflect on his life and legacy upon his death. It's all coming up when our news continues. Welcome back to our news. It's time now to turn our spotlight on events that shaped the day that was March 14th. Take a look. On this day in 2012 was a showdown between PLP and F&M supporters in the Straw Market. This after a press conference by PLP leaders who toured the facility after some vendors complained about structural problems, inoperable restrooms, and stall assignments. Then on this day in 2020, then Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis made his first national address on the novel coronavirus, which would weeks later lead to a nationwide lockdown in a state of emergency. Then 1 year later, on this day in 2021, days after the first batch of COVID-19 vaccines with 20,000 doses arrived, the first jab was given to nurse Ruth Bain. Well, the Humane Society of Grand Bahama says it's still in need of financial assistance. Executive Director Tip Burrows telling our news that following Hurricane Dorian and the pandemic, some of their funding was cut, which makes it hard for them to assist with the issue of stray dogs on the island. But another area of concern, he says, is unregulated, accidental, and intentional breeding.
Of mixed breed dogs, pure breed dogs, 2 different pure breed dogs. People think they're geneticists and they're making new breeds all the time. And you know, we see people all the time that come in here because they bought a puppy from somebody and now the puppy's sick because they didn't take it for its shots. And they, you know, so people are selling puppies to anyone with the money without making sure they're going to a good home.
And for those who want to assist the organization, here's how you can help.
A little can add up to a lot. You know, not everybody has big amounts to donate, but you know, if we've helped you with a problem, or if you're coming in to ask us to help with a problem, donate $5, $10, whatever. You know, it can add up, and it's we didn't cause the problem. We're trying to help fix it, but we need the public to help us be able to fix it.
All right, to watch that story again and for all of today's top stories, you can visit ournews.bs. It's going to do it for us at News at 7. Joining us now, Italia Hall. She's got the latest headlines. Italia?
Hi, Ken. Well, PM Davis speaks out on RCI Beach Club concerns and smoother drive for residents who traverse the Fishing Hole Road Service Road. First tonight on our news live at 7:30, the Prime Minister responds to concerns over the new multi-million-dollar beach club set for Paradise Island. We'll tell you what he says about major environmental concerns. Plus, Grand Bahama residents can expect a smoother drive with the completion of the Fishing Hole Service Road. An RF Economic Outlook talks the way forward from evolving risks.
How do we mitigate these challenges? How do we create adaptable economies in a mutable world?
And later, a veteran journalist, Ed Bethel, has died. His former colleagues remember the man and his impact. Our news live at 7:30 starts in a moment. Welcome to our news and thank you for joining us. I'm Italia Hall. The Prime Minister is hitting back after environmentalists and a major hotel have raised concerns about a multi-million-dollar beach club to be developed on Paradise Island by Royal Caribbean International. Jamila Mizik has his response in this report.
A proposed multi-million-dollar beach club development on Paradise Island by Royal Caribbean International not sitting well with many who fear these types of developments could have a negative environmental impact. Prime Minister Philip Davis responding today, following President and Managing Director of Atlantis Paradise Island Audrey Oswell coming out strongly against the move.
Concerns are legitimate concerns, and I think they are a bit ahead of themselves in the sense that those concerns will be taken into account when the final decisions are made in respect to what the development will look like. They still have to go through the environmental process to determine what is environmentally friendly. That's not my call.
Among the issues being raised are the impact to the coastline, additional boat traffic in Nassau Harbor, the desalination and water treatment plants in the area, and a lack of adequate emergency services.
In respect to the other issues she raised, we're all concerned about those issues. And until those are addressed properly, the project will... And this is what was communicated to her.
Executive Chairman of Save the Bays, Joe Darville, also weighed in, saying that if this project is to move forward, he hopes environmentalists monitor in the years to come. Another concern of his was the acquisition of Crown land, which the Davis administration says will not be included. However, Darville still raised this concern as it relates to the sale of Bahamian land by successive governments. Davis responded this way.
We ought to speak when we know all the facts. I will not be presiding over a decision that would lead to the consequences that he's suggesting. And what he has to appreciate that RCL, Royal Caribbean, they already own several acres of land there. They're developing their own land, and they're asking for us to partner with them, with our land, to make the experience for the visitors more palatable.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jamila Missick.
Thanks, Jamila. Well, new fleet and programs are on the way, or on the table rather, for the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. That's according to the force's Commodore Dr. Raymond King. This is all in an effort to assist with strengthening agreements between stakeholders in the region, including countries such as the Turks and Caicos, Cuba, and the United States.
We're in the procurement process to acquire another 62-meter patrol craft, another auxiliary vessel or roll-on, roll-off vessel to complement HMBS Lawrence Major. We're also procuring some smaller vessels, what we call safe boats. They are coastal patrol vessels. We're looking at procuring about 4 of those right now.
Now, King says the government is now looking at a public-private partnership agreement to fund the growth of the force's bases in the country. In addition, the organization has received approval from government to expand its reserve force.
We have 117 left of the initial 125 who would have went into basic training. We are now aggressively recruiting for our next entry. We're looking forward to possibly 200 recruits come July. Take on another 200. We just got approval to expand our reservist component. And so now we are advertising for industry professionals who wish to join our reserve unit to come and give us some service and give some service to the country with some of those scarce skill sets that we may need to augment our operation.
Some good news for Grand Bahama as work is ongoing at the Fishing Hole Road Causeway after numerous complaints. Work crews have completed repairs to the service road, making the daily commute a little easier for West Grand Bahama residents.
I mean, it's smooth now. It just gave me the impression that you could have done this a long time ago.
That's 8 Mile Rock resident Jonathan Sweeting, who says he's pleased to see the service road back in operation, as he says he avoided the area for a long time after he saw what was happening to other road users on the Fishing Hole Road Causeway.
It's great no one lost their lives, nothing like that. We can move forward right now, and I hope they get the bridge done. We need both of them.
Now, Ministry of Works officials confirmed that the service road would be repaired before the causeway. The project is expected to be complete in a few weeks. West Grand Bahama resident Stephanie Wright says with the causeway closed, her daily commute was affected, but expressed that motorists need to obey the speed limits as construction continues.
On the causeway, it says, but I think 30 persons go up to 50. And the dangerous thing what they does, they overtake. So it's a part of it is on the residents and also the persons who has to make sure that the bridge is safe. But people need to obey the law, not overtake on the causeway, go according to the speed limit, and that would, and in itself will lower the accident rate that happens on that bridge.
Well, an officer in Bimini has been transferred after being accused of beating students on that northern island, leaving parents outraged. National Security Minister Wayne Monroe addressing the alleged incident ahead of this morning's weekly cabinet meeting.
The officer has been transferred from Bimini for community relations, and the police will now investigate. If there's a report of a criminal offense, they'll investigate that matter.
And as for the repercussions the officer can face if found responsible for the alleged incident, Monroe said,
there are two types of repercussions a police officer can face where there's an allegation of misconduct. There are disciplinary ramifications, which are freestanding from criminal ramifications, and then there's aspects of criminal culpability. So the police can be put before a court. They might be found guilty, not guilty. Even if they're found not guilty, there are disciplinary standards that don't rise to the level of a crime, but still can call for an officer to be disciplined.
Gloomy skies in the capital today. Meteorologist Greg Thompson joins us now live from the Weather Center with a look at our current conditions. Good evening, Greg.
Yeah, thanks.
Greg, lots of rain as I was driving to work today.
And some thunder. We still have some thunder out there. A little thunderstorm just north of Paradise, and we showed that in our satellite picture. But yeah, the gloomy skies will continue through tonight.
All right, everyone be careful.
Yep, 76 degrees outside our studios right now with, as I mentioned, a thunderstorm in the neighborhood. Northwest winds at 15 miles per hour, and your feels-like temperature still hanging out near the mid to, well, slightly above 77. Around the area right now, there's a frontal boundary across the capital. A couple isolated thunderstorms with that system. It will side to the south and the central Bahamas, but cloud mass will remain with us as a lot of moisture is attached to this front, and we're looking for some cloudy and windy conditions through tomorrow. That's a quick check on weather. Stick with us. Look at the extended forecast still to come.
Still to come on our news, a one-day conference tackles evolving risks, the way forward. Plus, we meet the coaches leading the Bahamas swim team in the upcoming Carifta Games. And later, a veteran journalist, Ed Bethel, remembered for his trusted voice and impact on the industry. That's all coming up when our news returns. Prime Minister Philip Davis asking the Bahamas Retailers Association to give government more time, 2 weeks to be exact, to assess how they can better assist. This after the association took to the media following several attempts to meet with government to request a change in the profit margin for its members. And today, after finally getting that meeting with government, the Prime Minister and others expressed sympathy to the association over its viability.
The challenge we have is how we prevent further burden on the traveling public. And we need to see how we could delicately balance bringing relief to them and at the same time not overly burdening the consumers. And that's what we're talking about. And I must say that the retailers are willing and have been talking with us.
And as to why this meeting has been delayed, Economic Affairs Minister Michael Halkidis says they've been meeting with the association.
We've had several meetings, so it's not that we have not been meeting. We've met before. I've met, they've met with the technical staff, they've met with the Prime Minister before, and there has been communications back and forth in between.
Business minds came together for a one-day RF Bahamas economic outlook at the Bahamas Resort, where topics range from finding out the new normal to the future of finance. Our Marlena Leonard was there and has more in this report.
The one-day RF Bahamas Economic Outlook Conference was held under the theme Evolving Risks, the Way Forward. And in his welcome remarks, President and CEO of the RF Group, Michael Anderson, spoke to things like the impact of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the historic levels of inflation, and the rise of China as an economic powerhouse. He says in the face of these challenges, events like the one held today have their strengths.
By bringing together international and local leaders to effect change in policy and strategic planning, we can inspire and drive the necessary changes to protect our economies and take advantage of the emerging opportunities brought about by rapid change.
Economic Affairs Minister Michael Halkidis, a featured speaker, explains how the Bahamas' experience of the global economic situation is compounded by what he calls our experience of twin crises, and that we were hit with the pandemic only months after the devastation of Hurricane Dorian.
To use a biblical term, the challenges are indeed legion. And how do we mitigate these challenges? How do we create adaptable economies in a mutable world? And how do we foster resilience and cultivate an economic culture that can survive and thrive in the face of rapid change and instability? The theme of this year's conference, Evolving Risks, the Way Forward, speaks directly to these pressing concerns.
The event featured talks on the new normal of the economy, the future of finance, and growth opportunities, as well as a panel discussion on global minimum tax and what it means for the Bahamas' financial services industry. Reporting for Our News, I'm Marlena Leonard.
It's now time for tonight's Financial Market Minute, brought to you by RF, your local investment bank. This has been your Financial Market Minute. To explore the best performing mutual funds in the Bahamas, visit our website at www.rfgroup.com.
When our news comes back from the break, a closer look at the team of coaches hoping to bring home another win in the upcoming Carifta Swim Championships.
Plus, coming up in sports for tonight, Bahamians continuing to shine on Great Britain's baseball squad. World Baseball Classic continuing. We'll tell you the latest endeavors just ahead in sports.
And later, remembering a media icon and statesman at Bethel. We have the details when our news returns. This is our news. Welcome back. You often hear that a sports team is only as good as its coaches. And this year's Carifta swimming team is being led by 3 capable young men, all who have served on the Carifta coaching swim team before. Well, our Sasha Lightbourne has his Our News exclusive.
The expectations is to go down to Curacao, swim their best, and come back with another Carifta championship.
As the young people would say, that's it. And that's all. The goal is for the Carifta swim team to return a 5th consecutive crown, according to first-time head coach Cameron Bruni.
42, good team. 244, 5, 2 more, 3, 2, ready, go.
The team will leave for Curacao next month, undoubtedly with a target on their backs.
There's pressure when you trying to win a championship, especially for the 5th time, but I think it's good to use that pressure, get nerves, and go out there and do your best.
And for Trevano McPhee, a former Olympian and last year's head coach, there are few weaknesses on this team.
This is a very strong team again. We have great senior leadership in the 15 to 17 boys and girls, which will trickle down at the other age groups. So we have great leadership. Some of the top 3 coaches in the country leading them. So again, we go down there to defend the championship and hopefully bring back the 5th straight.
Now, Team Bahamas will have members swimming in the open water category in the Carifta Championships as well.
We have 3 swimmers competing in the 5K, which is an open water ocean swim. Something that we should be very good at here in the Bahamas, but we are trying to develop. So hopefully this is the start of some good stuff going ahead, and looking forward to them competing well.
Tomorrow, we get up close with 2 former Carifta swim team members, Lamar Taylor and Kalia Albury, who share their advice for this year's team. Reporting for Our News, I'm Sasha Lightbourne.
All right, thanks a lot, Sasha. Great reports from the Carifta swimming team. While still in sports, Bahamians shine at the World Baseball Classic. Meanwhile, an all-female championship boxing card is set for the end of the month. Here's Marcellus Hall with a check on sports.
All right, thanks a lot, Natalia. Welcome to our sports, everybody. I'm Marcellus Hall. Well, the Bahamas has some good representation at the World Baseball Classic. A number of Bahamians playing on the Great Britain squad. Yesterday, they took on Colombia, and guess what? Doing some good things. We'll tell you right now how it all went down. World Baseball Classic still going on. Great Britain yesterday taking on Colombia in the World Baseball Classic Pool C. Number of Bahamians on this squad, and they would certainly have an impact in this one, as the Great Britain squad able to score 3 runs in the bottom of the 4th inning. They would add another 2 in the bottom of the 5th, and then finish it off with 2 runs in the bottom of the 7th. They hold on to defeat Colombia. Big win for him here. 7-5 ends up being the final score. Now, as far as Great Britain is concerned, like we said, a couple of Bahamians on this team, led by B.J. Murray Jr. He had a big double in this one, 1 for 3 with an RBI. A couple of other Bahamians also having an impact in this particular contest. Shabazz Young also had a hit with 2 RBIs, 1 for 3 for him on the evening. He also added a walk. We'll keep an eye on how that team progresses. First Class Promotions, in its conjunction with the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, getting ready to host the WBA, World Boxing Association's International Female Fight Card. It's going to be a world title event, a 10-round main event featuring a couple of good fighters here. They'll be trying to vie for a title at the Kendall Jewelized Gymnasium. The event, you got time. It comes up on Friday, March 31st on 2023. Now, First Class Promotions being headed by Michelle Minus, who was doing it in honor of Ray Minus Jr. As far as the NBA is concerned, last night, DeAndre Ayton and the Phoenix Suns, they played against the Golden State Warriors last night, and their struggles continue. Talking about Phoenix, 123-112 ends up being the final score. DeAndre had a good night, 27 points, 12 rebounds, 1 steal. But again, second straight loss for Phoenix as they continue to reel. Meanwhile, Buddy Hield and Indiana Pacers, they took on the Detroit Pistons last night, and again, not a good result for Indiana, 117-97. That ends up being the final score in favor of Detroit. If you're wondering how Buddy did, well, he played limited minutes, 22 minutes, only had 7 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. But again, the losing trend continues for the Indiana Pacers. They hope to bounce back in their next contest. And that's your check on sports here on this Tuesday. I'm Marcellus Hall.
Still ahead on Our News tonight, saying goodbye to a legendary journalist and diplomat. Former colleagues of Ed Bethel share fond memories upon news of his death. And Greg is back in the Weather Center with a look ahead. You don't want to put those umbrellas away just yet. Stay with us. Welcome back to our news. There may be more rain ahead this week. Greg is back in the Weather Center with our extended outlook. Greg?
Yeah, we have that frontal boundary just to the south of the capital, but there is moisture behind it, so we could see a couple isolated showers tomorrow, and the winds will be picking up, but it's going to get very windy by Thursday as we expect some gale force wind conditions down near the southeast Bahamas. But yeah, a couple isolated showers with the front as it sags towards the south, maybe a thunderstorm tonight, and the clouds will remain with us once again through tomorrow. Future forecast showing the moisture associated with that frontal boundary dropping into the central Bahamas, and as I mentioned, through tomorrow and Wednesday into Thursday, showers in the forecast, and then it clears up for the weekend, and we have another front expected by the weekend as well. Talking about boating, for the northwest and central Bahamas, small craft caution continues for you guys. North to northeast winds at 15 to 20 knots. It will be gusty at times, seas 4 to 7 feet over the ocean. Your low tide will be at 7:38 tonight. For the southeast Bahamas, winds are a little lighter, but still a caution flag for the swells. North to northeast winds 10 to 15 knots. Seas 2 to 4 feet, but up to 7 feet in some swells. Here's a look now at your national forecast. In your extended forecast, we'll keep some showers in the forecast once again through tomorrow. By Thursday, we expect conditions to be improving. And as I mentioned, a frontal boundary expected by the weekend. Sunday time frame, some more showers in the forecast. That's a look at our weather. Back to you, Talia.
All right, thanks, Greg. Lots of rain. Be careful, guys, out there. While tributes continue to pour in for veteran broadcaster and diplomat Ed Bethel, who passed away at 82 on Monday. He's remembered as a media icon and statesman. Our Bertie McDermott sat down with some big names and journalists who says it's all thanks to Ed Bethel.
For thousands of Bahamians, he was a familiar voice across Radio Bahamas and TV 13. But all that are left now are memories. Ed Bethel is remembered as a trusted voice, iconic broadcaster, and statesman. To his former colleagues, he was a tutor and mentor, and taking a chance when others wouldn't.
He was open to giving opportunity, but you never got comfortable to think that you've made it in the, what do you call it? You're comfortable.
That was one of the reasons why I wanted to join ZNS. When I heard him in 1973, he and Charles Carter, announcing that the Bahamas was a new and independent nation.
These colleagues, and in some cases contemporaries, were influenced at different times, yet all had similar takeaways. Words like tough boss, consummate professional, and an expert on history and current affairs.
If you ever watched him or listened to him during his broadcasts, and even when he hosted shows, he didn't feel for information. He knew context, he knew the Bahamas, he knew the right questions to ask, he knew the difficult questions to ask.
Bethel started at the Tribune newspaper before transitioning into broadcasting at ZNS, then to private broadcasting at Love 97, and eventually a consul general and high commissioner. Malcolm recalls one experience doing a broadcast at Government House.
I gave him my notes. We went on there and he read every single word I had written on that paper, live on the air, and then handed it back to me. And I'm sitting there saying, oh my God, I don't believe this man just did this to me. But in hindsight, I realized that what he was doing was freeing me as a broadcaster from being stuck with a paper in front of me.
In a statement, the Bahamas Press Club president, Anthony Capron, expressed sadness over the loss, saying his death certainly leaves a void in journalists, both print and broadcast. Meanwhile, these former colleagues are grateful for the opportunities he provided.
Ed Bethel was nothing short of a legend. Legend.
So he was able to bring the foundation of the 80s and the 70s, the 80s and 90s to a whole new generation.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
All right, what a great legacy. Thanks for that, Berthany. And from the entire Our News family, we extend our condolences to the Bethel family. And to learn more about his life and legacy, you can visit ournews.bs. And with that, we thank you for joining us for Our News tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Natalia Hall. We'll see you tomorrow night. Have a great evening.